communications at Trump Tower. As Mr. Trump claims, what that means is that investigators were able to convince a judge that there is reason to believe the subject of the warrant is working for a foreign power and against the United States, which, as you know, Anne Marie and Tony, is pretty serious stuff.
So, Jeff, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that if this allegation from President Trump is correct, he could be, in effect, acknowledging that the Obama administration, the Obama Justice Department, could convince a judge that there was such a clear potential connection between Russia and agents within the Trump organization or Trump Tower that they got a warrant to tap this wire?
Well, you're right. What he is sort of opened himself up to is confirming what many of us have been reporting for some time, and that is that the FBI has been investigating whether there were ties and coordination between Russian operatives and officials and Trump campaign representatives. And so that's part of what is at play here. Is he confirming some of the details of this investigation, which, as we've reported for some time, appears to be expanding?
Now, when I first read these tweets, Jeff, and heard that Donald Trump was calling for a congressional investigation, I thought to myself, well, he's the president of the United States. Can't he make a couple phone calls and really get to the bottom of this without taking it to Twitter? Can he?
Well, listen, presidents from each administration, they get briefings. They get daily presidential briefings. This is a package of information that is gathered by the law enforcement / intelligence community. So any president of the United States has access to intel. Whether this president was briefed on this, we just don't know at this point. Whether he picked up this information from some media report, we don't know. And that's why you have people on Capitol Hill calling for the president to divulge where he is getting his information from.
Now, Jeff, what has been the reaction so far with the FBI Director James Comey asking the Justice Department, or reportedly asking the Justice Department, to reject the president's claim? No rejection so far forthcoming. What does that do to the relationship there?
Well, it creates a strain, and we have not heard back from DOJ in terms of, we're not hearing a response from DOJ on this. As we've been talking about, the FBI sent a clear message to DOJ over the weekend that they wanted DOJ to push back on this. But nothing from DOJ at this point. Maybe we'll hear something later on today, but so far there has not been that pushback that FBI Director James Comey was urging DOJ officials to do. In the eyes of FBI agents and the Bureau itself, this is an assault on its credibility, on its reputation, and that's why you have senior FBI officials and Director Comey himself pushing back on this notion that the president makes in these tweets that there was some authorized or unauthorized surveillance going on at Trump Tower.
All right, Jeff Pegues, nothing yet from the DOJ, but quite a bit from our own Jeff Pegues in Washington. Jeff, I don't think your work is done today. Thank you very much for being with us.
Meanwhile, President Trump's wiretapping claim is drawing even more reaction from lawmakers on Capitol Hill. Here's what Republican Senator Marco Rubio had to say in an interview yesterday.
Traveled with the president on Friday down to Florida on Air Force One. On Saturday morning, the president went on a tweet storm, including accusing former President Obama of illegally having him wiretapped. Do you have any insight? First of all, did the president talk to you about this on Friday? And do you have any insight on what precipitated all this?
We never obviously discussed that, number one, and I have no insight into what exactly he's referring to. And I'd imagine the president and the White House in the days to come will outline further what was behind that accusation. I've never heard that before, and I have no evidence, or no one's ever presented anything to me that indicates anything like that. But obviously in the days to come, you guys are going to ask them, and I imagine they're going to answer it.
Zeke Miller is a White House reporter for Time Magazine, and he joins us now from Washington. Zeke, we just heard Marco Rubio's response to the president's allegation. What do you think other Republican lawmakers are going to do now that the tweet storm has stormed its way to Monday?
I think they're in a tough spot here because Donald Trump is very sensitive to any criticism of him, and certainly he's now is the time when he's shaping his legislative agenda around Obamacare, tax reform, things like that. So they need things from him just like he needs cover from them. I think what you're going to start to hear is the White House yesterday said they were embracing a congressional investigation into Russian efforts in the 2016 campaign, and they want to include these alleged hacking or wiretapping actions by President Obama, these kind of unfounded allegations as part of that. I think what you'll hear is a lot of Republicans say, well, the White House just sort of blessed this investigation, this bipartisan, bicameral investigation, and they're just going to focus on that part and try to avoid and sort of sidestep the controversy on everything else if they can.
So, Zeke, after the president's tweet storm on Saturday, you wrote about what you call the two contradictory faces of Donald Trump. Break it down for us. We're talking about the guy who showed up at the joint session of Congress and stood up and was praised for his speech, and then the guy who's still tweeting about ratings for The Apprentice and other things at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, you can call Donald Trump the president and Donald Trump sort of just, the Twitter troll to a certain extent. I mean, and we saw both sides of him. And in Donald Trump's mind, they aren't really contradictory. They're kind of one and the same. They are who he is. They've gotten him this far. And and he doesn't see any issue with sort of showing those two faces of his presidency. And he thinks the American people, his voters in particular, have forgiven him for that throughout the campaign. And will do so as president. The thing is that doesn't really get him any converts, but it does keep sort of those who are already in his camp animated and excited, coming to his defense, attacking his his enemies, things like that. And that's sort of how Trump views it. It's burnished through years of work in the New York tabloid scene. But he doesn't see any contradiction in what is a contradiction, essentially, of sort of coming out one day and saying, the time for trivial disputes is over, and then starting, several of his own trivial and even greater disputes just days later.
So, Zeke, though, is there something beneficial about being difficult to predict, making people uncertain?
Certainly. I mean, and we've heard the president talk about that when it comes to foreign policy being unpredictable. Nobody really knows what to do. I mean, there's one school of